The emergency lights flashed red across the massive chamber of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Velther stood before 847 species, his voice shaking with frustration. This was the third time in 6 months they had gathered because of one problem: humans. They ignore us, Velther said, his forearms spreading wide. Every message we send, every warning we give, they just continue. The holographic display behind him showed dozens of star systems. Red dots marked human colonies. There were 47 of them now. Just 8 months ago, there were 12. The humans were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, and they were not asking anyone for permission. The Zorathi commander stood next, his scales gleaming under the council lights. We sent a delegation to their colony on New Montana. We brought all the proper documents. We explained the territorial laws that have kept peace for 10,000 years. And? Someone asked from the back. They gave us coffee, the commander said bitterly. They showed us around their farms. They were very polite. Then they went back to work and ignored every legal citation we presented. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was unprecedented. Every species that joined the galactic community understood the rules. You negotiate, you compromise. You respect boundaries. The system worked because everyone followed it, but humans seemed confused by the very idea. The Council had records of Earth's first contact team. When the diplomatic vessel arrived at Earth, humans had been excited, curious, and friendly. They signed some preliminary documents and asked 1,000 questions. But when the Council explained the process for applying for colony rights, process that typically took 50 to 70 years of careful negotiation, the humans had simply smiled and nodded. Then their colony ships kept launching. Perhaps they do not understand our authority, suggested a Tellurian representative, her voice hopeful. They understand, Velther replied. We have explained it many times. They just do not care. The council chamber fell silent. Not caring about galactic authority was not something that happened. Authority existed because everyone agreed it existed. What happened when someone simply opted out? We must issue an ultimatum, the Zorathi commander declared. Halt all expansion immediately. Face economic sanctions. If they refuse, we will have no choice but military intervention. The vote was overwhelming. 846 species agreed. Only one abstained, the Terrellians, who said they needed more time to study human psychology. The message was sent to Earth within the hour. It was the strongest language the Council had ever used. Halt expansion or face the consequences. Respect the law or be treated as rogues. Earth's response came back faster than expected, but it did not come from Earth's government. It came from something called the Free Colonists Association. The message was short, almost casual in tone. We respectfully decline your framework. Our colonies are independent. They go where they choose. We hope this does not damage our friendship. Please let us know if you would like to visit any of our worlds. You would be welcome. Then, as if to emphasize the point, 3 more human colony ships launched that same day. Velther read the message to the council. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some species demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to understand what respectfully decline your framework even meant. How could they decline? The framework was not optional. It was reality, but the Terrellian observer, an old female named Sira, stood quietly and said something that made everyone pause. They are not declining our reality, she said. They simply have a different one. They do not see borders the way we do. They do not see authority the way we do. When they look at empty space, they see possibility. When we look at empty space, we see complicated legal questions about who owns it. Then they are children, snapped the Zorathi commander. And children must be taught. Perhaps, Sarah said softly. Or perhaps they will teach us something. The council dismissed her words. They had made their decision. The sanctions would begin immediately. All 847 species would cease trade with human colonies. Technology exchanges would stop. Access to established hyperlanes would be restricted. Humans would learn that you cannot simply ignore galactic civilization. As the council adjourned, Velther remained in his seat staring at the star map. The red dots marking human colonies seemed to glow brighter. He counted them again, 47 colonies. In 8 months, his species, the Zorathi, had taken 200 years to establish their first colonies. They had negotiated carefully, followed every rule, respected every boundary. It was the proper way. The civilized way, but watching those red dots spread across the map, Velther felt something he had not expected to feel. Envy. He remembered being young, before he joined the diplomatic corps. He had dreamed of exploring unknown worlds, of building something new. But there were forms to fill, permissions to obtain, committees to consult. By the time he was authorized to visit a new world, it was already fully settled and regulated. Humans just went. They saw a star and flew to it. They found a planet and built homes. They did not wait for permission because they did not believe they needed it. Velther shook his head, clearing the dangerous thoughts. He was a representative of order, of civilization, of the system that had brought peace to the galaxy. Humans were disrupting that peace. They had to be stopped, but as he left the chamber and returned to his quarters, Velther could not stop thinking about that message. You would be welcome, it had said. Not you would be permitted or you would be granted access. Just welcome. As if visiting their worlds was as simple as showing up. As if the galaxy belonged to everyone. He pulled up the data on New Montana, the colony his delegation had visited. The reports showed a thriving settlement. Humans working alongside their own machines, building farms and factories, schools and homes. There were even a few Terrellians there now, living among them, living without asking the council for permission. Velther closed the file and went to sleep, but his dreams were troubled. In them he saw endless red dots spreading across the galaxy, and he could not tell if it was a nightmare or a vision of something else entirely. Something like freedom. 6 months had passed since the council imposed the harshest sanctions in galactic history. Every species had agreed. All 847 members had cut trade with human colonies. No technology exchanges, no resource sharing, no access to the main hyperlanes that connected civilized space. The council's economic analysts had predicted human colonies would begin failing within 3 months. By 6 months, they expected desperate calls for negotiation. Instead, they got something completely unexpected. The colonies are growing, the lead analyst reported to the emergency committee. Her voice carried disbelief. Not just surviving, growing. New Montana's population has increased by 30%. New Texas just opened a new manufacturing center, and they have established 12 more colonies since the sanctions began. Velther stared at the data, trying to make sense of it. How? Without our trade networks, without our technology, how are they managing this? They improvise, the analyst said. She brought up a detailed report. When they needed advanced medical equipment, they designed their own. It is less elegant than ours, but it works. When they lacked exotic materials for ship engines, they found alternatives. Some of their solutions are actually innovative. The Zorathi commander slammed his hand on the table. This is impossible. No species survives isolation from galactic trade. No one, but the evidence was clear. Human colonies had become completely self-sufficient. More than that, they were helping each other. The Free Colonists Association had evolved into a massive network where every colony shared everything. A breakthrough in farming on one world was immediately transmitted to all others. A new mining technique developed on New Texas was being used on 30 other worlds within weeks. They treat knowledge like air, the analyst continued. Free. Available to everyone. We have never seen anything like it. The council had always controlled knowledge carefully. Technology was traded, licensed, regulated. It maintained balance and ensured no species gained too much advantage. But humans just gave everything away to each other. What made it worse was the travel situation. Zorathi Admiral Kresh stood before the council with a report that bordered on humiliating. We cannot track their ships anymore. They ignore hyperlane protocols completely. Last week, I personally observed a human cargo vessel navigate through a binary pulsar system. That is suicide, someone said. That is what I thought too, Kresh replied. But the ship emerged on the other side, 3 weeks ahead of the normal route. When we questioned the pilot later, she said it was, quote, a bit bumpy, but totally worth it. Humans treated space travel like humans apparently treated everything else. The rules were suggestions. The impossible was just difficult. The dangerous was just exciting. Trade convoys moved between human colonies constantly, and council ships could not intercept them because humans found routes through places no sane pilot would go. Through stellar phenomena, through gravity wells, through regions that should have torn their ships apart, and they did it in converted civilian vessels with improvised engines. Their engineering is chaos, one council engineer reported. Nothing is standardized. Every ship is different, but somehow they all work. They patch systems together that should not be compatible. They use duct tape and determination where we would use precision manufacturing. What is duct tape? Someone asked. Human magic, the engineer replied tiredly. Then the message arrived that changed everything. It was broadcast to all council worlds, public and open. Not a private diplomatic communication, but something anyone could see. Hello, galactic neighbors, the message began. It showed a human woman standing in what looked like a town square on New Montana. Behind her, humans and a few Terrellians were working together, building something. We know things are tense right now. We understand you are upset with us. But we want to extend an invitation. Come visit our colonies. Not for negotiations or politics. Just come see what we are building. Come as tourists, as guests. We think you might like it. The message showed images of human colonies, children playing in parks, markets full of food and goods, factories producing everything from ship parts to furniture, schools where human and Terrellian children learned together. It all looked peaceful, productive, and happy. We are not your enemies, the woman continued. We are just people trying to build homes and lives. If you want to talk, our doors are open. If you want to trade, we are interested. If you just want to visit and have a barbecue, that works too. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. The message ended with coordinates to a dozen human colonies and an open invitation. The council chamber was silent after watching it. This is propaganda, Lizorthi commander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Asked Kusira, the old Terrellian observer. Or is it just true? Velthor studied the message carefully. There was no threat in it. No demands. No anger about the sanctions. Just an invitation. Humans were treating the council like distant neighbors they hoped to befriend. Not like a legitimate authority they needed to respect. It was infuriating and confusing in equal measure. Then the reports started coming in. Some council species were watching the message and asking questions. Why were they sanctioning colonies that just wanted to build homes? What threat did these humans actually pose? Why did council law matter more than people's freedom to live where they chose? 3 species sent quiet, unofficial messages to the council leadership. They were interested in trading with humans. Not openly, of course, but perhaps some arrangement could be made? The council denied the requests. Unity had to be maintained, but that night, a Terrellian merchant ship docked at New Montana loaded with trade goods. When questioned, the captain said he was just visiting friends. The cracks in the council's unity were beginning to show. Velthor went to his quarters and pulled up the message again. He watched the woman speak, watched the people working and living in the background. He saw something in their faces that he had not seen in council worlds for a long time. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated joy. They were not sophisticated. They were not following 10,000 years of tradition. They were just living, and dozens of species across the galaxy were watching and wondering why that was supposed to be wrong. The military commanders were still pushing for intervention. The fleet was assembling. But Velthor suspected it was already too late. You could not fight an idea whose time had come, and the idea that people should be free to go where they wanted, build what they wanted, and live how they wanted was spreading faster than any fleet could travel. The council fleet was the largest. Armada assembled in 3 centuries. 300 warships from 40 different species hung in space like a metal wall. The message was clear: comply or face consequences. Admiral Kresh commanded from the Zorathi flagship. He had been chosen for his experience and his restraint. This was not a mission of destruction. It was a show of force designed to bring humans to the negotiating table. They would arrive at New Texas, demand immediate compliance, and if refused, disable the colony's orbital infrastructure. No casualties. Just a demonstration of reality. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. New Texas hung before them, a beautiful blue and green world with 3 orbital stations and scattered satellites. And defending it were exactly 7 human ships. Kresh studied the vessels with professional interest. They were converted mining ships and cargo haulers. Someone had welded weapons to their hulls, mismatched and awkward. It would have been laughable if it was not so sad. "Open a channel," Kresh ordered. A human face appeared on the screen. A woman in her 40s wearing a jacket that said, "New Texas Volunteer Defense Force." She smiled tiredly. "Big fleet you have got there," she said. "I am Admiral Kresh of the Galactic Council. You are in violation of multiple territorial agreements. Surrender your orbital assets immediately and prepare for Council occupation." The woman nodded slowly. "Yeah, we figured you might say something like that. Here is our answer: no. You have 7 ships against 300, Kresh said patiently. "Be reasonable." "We are being reasonable," the woman replied. "This is our home. We built it. Our families are down there. You are welcome to visit peacefully. You are welcome to trade. You are even welcome to settle if you follow our laws. But you are not welcome to threaten our home." "So no," Kresh gave her one more chance. "You cannot win this fight." "Probably not," she agreed. "But we are going to have it anyway." She smiled again. "Good luck, Admiral." "You will need it." The channel closed. Kresh gave the order to advance. The fleet moved forward in careful formation. The 7 human ships spread out, moving into positions that made no tactical sense. Then everything went sideways. The first human ship dove toward a nearby asteroid field and detonated mining charges. Suddenly, the space between the fleet and the planet was filled with high-velocity debris. Kresh ordered evasive maneuvers, but 2 Talarian cruisers took damage to their hulls. The second human ship started firing projectiles at asteroids, using them like billiard balls to redirect their trajectories toward the fleet. It was insane. The calculations needed for that kind of precision were impossible to do in real time, except humans were doing it. "They are using mining computers," his tactical officer reported with amazement. "They calculate trajectories for this kind of thing routinely. They just weaponize their work." A third human ship positioned itself near the planet's largest moon and fired maneuvering thrusters at full power. The moon's gravity well shifted slightly, just enough to disrupt the fleet's navigation systems. That should not be possible. The navigation officer stammered. "Tell them that." Kresh snapped. The battle, if it could be called that, became a nightmare of improvisation. Humans were not fighting a traditional engagement. They were treating it like a complex engineering problem that needed creative solutions. One human ship literally rammed a council destroyer. Kresh watched in horror as the crew evacuated in escape pods moments before impact. The destroyer was disabled. When they recovered the human pilot, she said, the math worked out, mostly. But the real disaster came when Kresh's own command system started malfunctioning. Every screen in the fleet suddenly displayed the same message: "We do not want to fight you." Then images began playing. Human families, children in schools, farmers in fields, scientists in laboratories, people living normal lives. "We just want to build homes. We just want to live." Why does that require permission? More images. A Terrellian family eating dinner with humans. Workers building a hospital together. A mixed-species classroom. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. Kresh tried to shut down the broadcast, but it was everywhere. Every ship, every screen. The humans had infiltrated their entire network. Not to destroy, Not to steal, just to show them this. We are not your enemies. We are your neighbors. We are people just like you. Please stop trying to hurt us. The final image was a little human girl holding a sign that said, "Welcome to New Texas," in 12 different languages. Then the broadcast ended, and the human ships stopped fighting. They pulled back and waited. Kresh looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the screens in silence. Across the fleet, the same silence was spreading. Over the comm channels, he heard voices questioning, doubting, asking why they were here. "Admiral," his communication officer said quietly, "we are receiving messages from 23 ships. Their crews are refusing to continue the engagement." Kresh felt something break inside him. Not defeat? Something else. He looked at the 7 human ships floating near New Texas, battered but still functional. Then he looked at his massive fleet, untouched but somehow beaten anyway. "Open a channel to the human commander," he said. The woman's face appeared again. She looked exhausted. "We are withdrawing," Kresh said. The words tasted like ash. "I am sorry it came to this," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "If you change your mind about visiting, we still have that barbecue on Saturdays. You are still welcome." The channel closed. Kresh gave the order to retreat. The fleet turned and jumped back into hyperspace, not because they were defeated militarily, but because half the crews were no longer sure what they were fighting for. As the fleet dispersed, Kresh sat alone in his quarters. He had commanded warships for 40 years. He had fought in 3 conflicts. He understood war, strategy, and force, but he had no idea how to fight people who offered you dinner after defeating you. The human ships did not pursue. They did not gloat. They just sent a final message to the retreating fleet. Safe travels, come back when you are ready to be friends." Kresh deleted the message, but he could not delete what he had seen. Those images of people living together, building together, working together. No complicated treaties. No centuries of negotiation. Just people deciding to get along. It looked simple. It looked like something he had forgotten was possible. And across the council fleet, on hundreds of ships, thousands of crew members were thinking the same thing. The report Kresh filed was brief. Mission failed. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile actions against human colonies. When asked for explanation, he added only one line. "We cannot win a war against people who refuse to see us as enemies." The council would debate those words for months. But for the soldiers who had been there, who had seen those images and heard those messages, the debate was already over. They had come to enforce order and found something that looked a lot like freedom. And many of them wanted it. The council chamber had never felt so empty. 17 species had formally questioned the military action. 3 species, including the rigid and traditional Terrellians, had begun unauthorized diplomatic contact with human colonies. The unity that had held for 10,000 years was cracking. Ambassador Velther stood before what remained of the council leadership and delivered his report. He had done something no council member had done in centuries. He had acted alone without authorization. He had gone to Earth. "You did what?" the Zorathi commander demanded. "I went to Earth," Velther repeated calmly. "I wanted to understand. I wanted to find their leader and negotiate properly. I thought if I could speak directly to whoever was in charge, we could resolve this." And Velther's expression was somewhere between amusement and despair. "There is no one in charge, not the way we understand it." He brought up his recordings. They showed him being shuttled between different organizations, governments, and groups. The United Nations, the Free Colonists Association, various nation-states, corporations, private citizens who somehow had authority to speak on behalf of colonies they had never visited. "I met with 17 different groups," Velther continued. "Each one told me something different. Some wanted to negotiate. Some did not care about negotiating. Some did not even know we were upset. One human leader told me, and I quote, 'We are kind of figuring it out as we go.' The chamber was silent. They have no central authority," Velther explained. "No supreme leader. No unified government that can make galaxy-wide commitments. They have hundreds of competing interests, all loosely coordinated but fundamentally independent. We have been trying to negotiate with an entity that does not exist. Then they are primitive, someone said. Barbaric, they need structure. Do they? Sierra the Torellian asked quietly. She had been sitting silently, but now she stood. Their colonies thrive. Their people are happy. They innovate faster than any species we have encountered. Perhaps the question is not why they lack structure. Perhaps it is why we need so much of it. The argument that followed lasted for hours. Some council members insisted humans were a threat to galactic order. Others questioned what that order was actually providing. A few asked dangerous questions about whether the council's authority was legitimate at all if species could simply choose to ignore it. Meanwhile, outside the council chamber, the galaxy was changing. Human colonies had reached 78 worlds. But they were not exclusively human anymore. Torellian families were settling on New Montana. Zorathi scientists were working at research stations on New Earth. Even a few Tellarian traders had set up shops on New Texas. They came in small numbers at first, individuals, families, people, who were tired of waiting 50 years for permission to start a new life. People who heard about worlds where you could just show up and build something. The Free Colonists Association welcomed them all. No applications, no decades of bureaucratic processing. Just a simple rule: contribute, respect your neighbors, and follow local laws. That was it. Valthor watched the migration data with growing concern. It was not a flood yet, but it was steady, and it was growing. They are not conquering us, he told the remaining council leadership. They are making us irrelevant. One of the most troubling reports came from a sociologist studying human colonies. She had spent 3 months on New Montana observing. Her findings were revolutionary. Humans operate on something they call emergent order, she explained. They believe complex organization can arise naturally from simple rules and individual freedom. They do not plan society from the top down. They allow it to grow from the bottom up. That is chaos, someone objected. Is it? The sociologist challenged. I watched a community handle a water shortage. There was no central committee. No 5-year planning process. People just started solving it. Someone invented a better recycling system. Someone else organized a conservation program. Someone figured out how to extract moisture from the atmosphere more efficiently. Within weeks, the problem was solved. No bureaucracy, no regulations, just people cooperating freely. But what about conflicts? They argue, the sociologist said, loudly and frequently, but they resolve things locally. They vote, they compromise, they make mistakes and fix them. It is messy, but it works. The most damaging blow to the council came from an unexpected source. The Torellians, the most traditional and rule-following species in the galaxy, made an announcement. We are withdrawing from council territorial authority, their representative declared. Effective immediately, Torellian space will be open to free settlement. Any species, including humans, may establish colonies in our territory with our blessing. We will maintain diplomatic relations with the council, but we will no longer recognize its regulatory authority. The chamber erupted. The Torellians were the foundation of council law. They had helped write half the regulations. Their withdrawal was catastrophic. Why? Velthor asked them privately after the session. The Torellian representative, a young male named Kesh, spoke with conviction. Because I visited New Montana, I saw what life could be like. My daughter is 6 years old. Under council law, she will need to wait until she is 50 before she can apply to settle a new world. If approved, she will be 70 before she actually moves there. She will spend her entire youth and middle age waiting for permission to live. He pulled up images on his datapad. Or she could go to New Montana next year. She could grow up on a frontier world. She could build something. She could live. Why would I choose the council's way when I can choose that for her? Velthor had no answer. The fractures spread quickly. 8 more species withdrew or reduced their participation over the next month. Not because they hated the council. Not because they were conquered. Simply because they looked at the human model and preferred it. The few military hardliners who remained called for renewed action. We must destroy these colonies before more species defect. But Admiral Kresh, who had led the failed intervention, stood and spoke against them. I will not, he said flatly. I will not order ships to fire on colonies full of families. I will not destroy homes because people decided to build them without permission. If that makes me a traitor to the Council, so be it. He resigned his commission that day. A week later, he was seen visiting New Texas as a tourist. Velthor sat in his office, surrounded by reports and data. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around a completely different principle. Not unified control, but distributed cooperation. Not careful planning, but adaptive experimentation. Not order imposed from above, but freedom exercised from below. It terrified him. It fascinated him, and late at night, when he was alone, he pulled up the immigration information for New Montana. The application process was simple, too simple. Just basic information and a declaration that you would respect local laws and contribute to the community. You could be approved in days. You could be there in weeks. Velthor did not submit the application, but he did not delete it either. The council still existed. It still met, it still debated, but fewer species attended each session. The Grand Chamber that once held representatives from 847 species now barely filled half its seats. The age of Central Galactic Authority was ending. Not with a war, not with a revolution, just with people quietly deciding they preferred a different way, and at the center of it all were humans, not conquering or commanding, just living their lives and inviting others to join them. The galaxy would never be the same. 2 years after the crisis began, Ambassador Velthor stood at the spaceport of New Harmony and watched the impossible become routine. A Zorathi cargo ship docked next to a human freighter. Terrellian families walked past carrying luggage toward the immigration center, which was really just a small building with a few friendly humans asking basic questions. A Tellarian musician was playing something on an instrument Velthor did not recognize, while a crowd of mixed species listened and applauded. No council regulations. No territorial checkpoints. No decades of paperwork, just people living. New Harmony was the first jointly founded human Zorathi colony established 6 months ago. It already had a population of 12,000. By next year, projections showed it would reach 30,000. There were 50 colonies like it now, scattered across the frontier. Mixed species, mixed cultures, all operating under the simple principle that had brought humans into SPAC. Come build something if you want to. The Galactic Council still existed. Velthor technically still held his position as ambassador, though he was not sure what he was ambassador to anymore. The council met once a month instead of weekly. Only 43 species still attended regularly. The rest had withdrawn or, more commonly, just stopped showing up. The grand treaties and territorial agreements that had governed the galaxy for 10 millennia were not enforced anymore. Not because anyone had repealed them, just because no one paid attention to them. Humans had not destroyed the council. They had simply made it optional. And most species were choosing the option without it. Welcome to New Harmony. Velthor turned to see a human woman approaching. She was the settlement coordinator, a role that seemed to involve knowing everyone and helping solve problems without having any official authority. Thank you for inviting me, Velthor said. We are having a ceremony tonight, she said. Founding anniversary celebration. You are speaking, right? Velthor nodded. He had been asked to give a speech about galactic history. It seemed fitting. He was watching the old order end and the new one begin. That evening, under the light of New Harmony's 3 moons, Velthor stood before a crowd of several thousand beings. Humans, Zorathi, Terrellians, and a dozen other species. All living together. All building together. 2 years ago, he began, the Galactic Council issued an ultimatum to humanity. Stop expanding. Follow our laws. Accept our authority. Or face consequences. The crowd was silent, listening. We thought we were defending civilization. Defending order. Defending 10,000 years of peace and stability. He paused. We were wrong, murmurs spread through the crowd. We were not defending civilization, Velther continued. We were defending bureaucracy. We were defending a system that had become more important than the people it was supposed to serve. We had forgotten what civilization actually means. He gestured to the settlement around them. This is civilization. People from different worlds, different cultures, different species, choosing to live together, building together, helping each other, not because the council told them to, not because regulations required it, but because they wanted to. Velther looked out at the faces watching him, young and old, human and alien, all of them here because they had chosen freedom over certainty. Humans never refused to negotiate with us, he said. They just never understood why they needed our permission to live their lives. And now, neither do we. The applause started slowly, then grew. Velther stepped down from the platform and melted into the crowd. No security. No protocol. Just another person at a community gathering. Later he sat with a group around a fire. A human tradition, apparently. Someone had brought something called marshmallows. A Terrellian child was teaching a human child some kind of clapping game. Adults were talking about the new water recycling system they were building. Do you miss it? Someone asked Velther. The council? The old ways? Velther thought about it. He thought about the grand chambers and the elaborate ceremonies, the careful protocols and the ancient traditions, the sense of being part of something vast and permanent. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I look at this. He gestured at the scene around them, and I realized what we had was not peace. It was paralysis. We were so busy maintaining order that we forgot to live. The council did keep the peace for a long time, a human woman pointed out. She was being fair, acknowledging the good with the bad. It did, Velther agreed. But it did so by preventing change, by making everything slow and complicated. We had peace because we had frozen in place. Humans showed us that you can have peace and freedom. It is messier. It requires more trust. But it is real. The conversation drifted to other topics. Plans for the new school. Ideas for the upcoming Harvest Festival. Someone's proposal to start a theater company. Normal life. Community life. Velther realized that for the first time in decades, he felt genuinely happy. The Galactic Council held one final major session 3 months later. The purpose was to formally acknowledge the new reality. They could not enforce their authority anymore. They could not pretend the old system still worked. Instead, they transformed. The council became what humans called the Frontier Alliance, though the name was still being debated. Not a government, but a forum. A place where colonies could coordinate when they wanted to. Share resources. Resolve disputes. Organize mutual defense. Participation was voluntary. Authority was earned, not assumed. And everything was advisory, not mandatory. It was chaotic compared to the old system. Arguments happened frequently. Mistakes were made regularly. There was no grand plan, no careful control, but there was also innovation. Rapid adaptation, freedom, growth. The human representative at the final council session was asked to say a few words. She was a middle-aged woman from Earth who had helped coordinate the whole frontier expansion. We never meant to disrupt your system, she said honestly. We just wanted to explore, to build homes, to live. We did not understand your regulations because we did not think living required permission. We still do not, to be honest. She smiled. But we are glad things worked out. We are glad you are joining us out here on the frontier. We are glad we can be neighbors and friends instead of adversaries. The galaxy is big enough for all of us to find our place. Her final words became famous across the galaxy. You were always welcome to join us. The door was always open. We are just glad you finally walked through it. The session ended. The old council dissolved. The new alliance was born, and across hundreds of worlds, millions of beings went about their lives, building, creating, growing, and living freely. Velther eventually retired from diplomatic service entirely. He moved to New Harmony permanently and opened something humans called a coffee shop. It became a popular gathering place where beings from all over the sector came to talk, relax, and plan their futures. Above the door he hung a sign in 12 languages. It said simply, "Welcome. You do not need permission to come in." Every Saturday, true to the old promise, there was a barbecue. The whole community came. Food was shared. Stories were told. Children played. Adults planned. Elders offered wisdom. It was not perfect. There were arguments and problems. There was crime occasionally and conflicts regularly. But people solved things together, locally, with the freedom to try different approaches. One day, a young Zorathi asked Velthor what the secret was. How had humans managed to change the entire galaxy? Velthor thought about all the complex political analysis he could offer, all the sociological theories he had studied, all the historical patterns he understood. Instead, he gave the simple answer. They did not ask permission to live. And then we realized we did not need to either. The galaxy spun on. Species mixed and mingled. Colonies spread to new worlds. Cultures blended and adapted. There was no central control, no grand authority, no master plan, just billions of beings choosing freely how to live their lives, and somehow it worked. Years later, historians would debate the humans and the council crisis. They would analyze the collapse of the old order and the rise of the new. They would write thousands of pages about political theory and social dynamics. But for the people who lived through it, the explanation was simpler. Someone had finally asked why they needed permission to be free. And once that question was asked, no authority could answer it satisfactorily, the old council leadership. What remained of it met one last time in the nearly empty chamber. They voted to officially disband, to formally end 10,000 years of centralized galactic government. The vote was unanimous. As they left the chamber for the final time, one of the old Zorathi counselors paused and looked back. "Did we fail?" he asked. The others thought about it. "No," someone finally said. "We just served our purpose. We kept the peace until the galaxy was ready for something better. And now it is." They turned off the lights and locked the doors. Somewhere on New Harmony, a human child and a Terrellian child were playing in a park, making up some game with rules that changed every 5 minutes. Their parents watched and smiled. The galaxy had found a new way, and it looked like freedom.